Hey guys, what's up? So coming at you here from Beijing, China. Um, so I've seen the way they handled the virus up close here in China, and of course I'm very impressed with how they did it. Everything closed down for about 2 months, and now they're opening up again. Of course, they're very afraid that people coming back to China from overseas might be infected. So right now, that's the main risk. There could be a new outbreak basically at any point, but of course, people are careful. To stop the virus, there are basically only two ways. Um, Permanently, I mean, to stop it permanently. One way is to have a vaccine, and as we all know, that might take a year or maybe a year and a half more. Uh, the other way is to get people immune. If people are immune, it's basically the same thing as they are vaccinated. And of course, in China, because they stopped the virus so early on, most people were not infected, and as such, there's still no immunity. A new outbreak here could explode again, basically at any point. So, looking at the different approach to the virus in the West right now, most countries are going down the Chinese model. Um, and in theory, that could work. Of course, the problem is that it's a disaster for people's livelihoods. I have stocks myself, and I've seen my savings gone down around 40%. I think it will come back, but still, it's a tough situation for many of us. The economies that will be destroyed, people's companies will be destroyed, um, and there's no sure way that people will come back from that immediately after the virus is gone, because once you have lost your business, your life savings, they're gone, um, and no one knows for sure if that will ever come back. Um, so the price the West is paying right now to close down their economies is huge, and I'm not sure if they even realize how huge it is. The only country in the world right now that has an alternative to the Chinese approach is basically my home country, Sweden, which of course I'm also following closely. In Sweden, what they're doing is that they are basically allowing society to go on as normal. They tell people to be cautious, but basically still go to work. They still allow the schools to remain open, so that people who are doing important jobs like in the police and the medical care can still go to work. They're basically allowing people to get infected, but they're doing it so in a way that it will not be too much too quick. And they're doing that because they want to develop what some people refer to as herd immunity. Because once you have around 60% of the population immune to a virus, the virus basically stops spreading, at least exponentially. It might still be around, but it's no longer a big danger to the population. Um, and what they're doing with the people who are in the risk group, people above 70 or 80, and people who have lung diseases and so on, they're telling them to stay home, to self isolate, and to go into quarantine. They're not forcing them to do that, but still, most people in that group are actually staying at home. And until now, it's been very successful. The number of infected people is big, much bigger than we see in the numbers, because they have stopped measuring people who have symptoms. They only measure the people or test the people who are in the risk group and who are at serious health conditions. Um, but basically, with such a large number of infected people, as well as such a low number of mortalities as we still have in Sweden, it shows until now the strategy is working, because the people who are getting infected are not people in the risk group. It's mainly people in the low risk group, and that's why you have a much lower mortality figure. So in Sweden, they're basically allowing the economy to go on. Of course, for a small business owner, they might lose 50% of the revenue, but it's not 100% like in other countries around the world. And meanwhile, we still have a low mortality rate because the risk group is being protected. Um, so that's the model. It's a bit risky. It could go wrong, but until now it's working very well. I think many countries around the world will look at this and might also try to implement something similar in the future. You see the results of this already occurring naturally because of cultural differences in Europe. So you see in South Europe, like Spain, Italy, they have a death ratio of around 4 to 5%, whereas in North Europe it's closer to 0.3, 0.4%. In Germany, I think it's 0.2. And this is because naturally in North Europe, older people, people in risk group, are already isolated from people who are younger. You don't really have mixed generations living together in North Europe. Basically, when you're 18, you move out from your parents and then you're on your own, right? Whereas in South Europe, they still have, often they have grandma, they have ma, they have the kids living together. And then you have much more risk that young, healthy, asymptomatic people will spread the virus to older people. And that's not the case at all in North Europe. Often when people are above 70 or 80 in North Europe and they simply are too unhealthy to take care of themselves, they move to retirement homes. They don't stay with their kids or the family anymore. And as such, they're basically already isolated. It's a little bit sad in other ways, but right now for them, that's actually a good way to stay safe. So I think right now in the West, most countries are doing it the wrong way. They are over exaggerating. They're closing down everything to protect everybody. But as soon as there's a new outbreak somewhere, it will spread just as quickly as it would have before the first infections, because you will not have immunity anywhere. So the best way to do it is to open up society again for people who are below 60 years old, who are healthy, and allow them to go to work, open up the schools again. But of course, people should be cautious. It's good to have some restrictions and some advice on how to reduce the risk, because you don't want too many to be infected too fast. But overall, I think the Swedish model, which today is unique in the world, is actually the best way to go for the rest of the West. So that's just my opinion, guys. Feel free to give me your comments or your insight.